everything have a function, and that's a thing when you use so many years, then you can make it better.
When I was starting up, I was thinking to work with wood. I didn't know exactly how it was.
And they buy a ticket to be at the hunt one day, and we shoot, and they can buy the deer afterwards.
What can we do in forestry to do it even better than business as usual, than what we are used to?
If you take care of the forest, it will produce timber and other things that we need in our society.
You have to make the best you can, always.
When a customer called me the first time he wanted to buy a wood miser, I asked how much he wanted to cut.
So we simply just started very small and bought a new machine whenever the money was to it.
People like to buy wood from special place, not normal wood shop, but where there's a story behind it.
We need to improve the profitability of these small sawmills by maybe taking the next step in the production chain from sawn goods to further processed products.
The TreProX course series are supported by the Erasmus Plus program. It's a cooperation between partner schools and institutions in Iceland, in Sweden and in Denmark. Together we created a platform for teaching and training in the forest and wood processing industries.
We are now at the Danish Forestry College at the department in Jutland, in the middle of Lövenholm Estate Forest. What you will see around here is a setup of small-scale sawmills. We got some instructors and the participant is now trying to operate the sawmills themselves. They are trying to find out how much yield can you get from a piece of timber, how is the cutting done, how is the sharpening done, how can you work with the drying, how can you prevent rot and mold in the sawn timber. We are also looking at further processing, like in planing, in edging and all this kind. You will see people working with log house building in a very easy way to do.
We planted poplar as a nurse crop here because poplar has the capacity of starting extremely quickly, and now we actually have a forest that's between 20 and 30 meters tall, and we have beech growing as an understory. Under poplar you find quite a variety of species because of these good favorable germination conditions, and some say the open canopy structure of the poplar is supposed to be pretty attractive for birds to come and sit and then take off again like pigeons, and many of them drop some seed and so on. Don't know if that's true, but it would be interesting to actually get it inventoried. And more than 20 years ago when we moved here, I was so fond of having my own forest that I decided to increase the area of forest on the farm by 4 hectares of additional farm forest land. So I got something that looks like an old forest within 20 years. That was what I wanted to look deeper into and also have the privilege of owning that myself. Briefly, I can say that such a forest and the nurse crop, as we call it, the poplar nurse crop, that's a pretty interesting method in times of climate change where we all talk about doing something to mitigate the climate change. And as foresters, we are of course looking into how can we, with sustainable forest management, actually contribute to that agenda. What can we do in forestry to activate the potentials of forest management to do it even better than business as usual, than what we are used to regarding CO2 sequestration and producing wood that can be used and replace steel and concrete? I was worried when we started because I heard that poplar needs a lot of weeding to become successful. So I was actually a little bit worried that the poplar wouldn't make it, and therefore I used both species. because the black alder is more robust and also it's not damaged the same way by deer as the poplar. The deer loves rob the poplar and thereby debark them, but that was never really an issue. I actually did a little pilot study 2 years ahead, and I was pretty comfortable when I did the big project on 4 hectares. The black alder is almost gone. They were taking the lead from the beginning, but then when the poplar got started, they took the lead. And that happened after 7, 8, 9 years. I had done them myself, small, actually containerized cuttings. I cut the cuttings in March and put them into the Hico tray. You know, some of you may know the Hico plastic trays for containerized seedlings. And then they were planted out in the beginning of July, and it was so dry that I could hardly get the planting tool into the ground. It's clay soil here. But they actually survived pretty well, but were delayed. Poplar forest on good clay sites that we are having in this part of the country. Within 5 years they can reach the capacity of sequestrating 25 to 30 tons of CO2 per hectare a year. And that's about 2-3 times larger than Danish forest in average. That's a way to actually increase the mitigation effect of managed forest. The weak part of it is that there is not really a market for poplar wood now. But as we are looking into a shortage in the global wood supply, I bet industries and people will adapt to use the quality of wood needed rather than the best quality everywhere just because it's sold too cheap, the price is too low on good wood, because the whole green transition is putting a pressure on the land resources we have globally. But we have to remember that the whole wood market has been so spoiled for decades. They have paid hardly anything for the good qualities. Now the situation is changing, and we started talking about that changing situation more than 10 years ago, but nobody believes it until you see the prices go up. And that's what's happening now. We need to become independent of fossil fuels. We need to produce all of that on the surface of the planet. And therefore we will be running into shortages of land, and therefore we need to be better to reach the potentials of the land and to get the materials we need produced on smaller area, especially if we want to dedicate a larger proportion of area for biodiversity. We cannot just leave it to nature to tackle the situation that we are in now with 8 billion people on the planet, a lot of them still in need of better living conditions. So I would just encourage you in Iceland to get going with your afforestation, because you will also, as we did experience here in Denmark, experience that the forest actually grows better than you would believe from the beginning, because as you plant more forest in the landscape, site conditions will improve, growth will increase, and the opportunities to establish a range of tree species will also increase in time. So I wish you good luck.
It's built in Norway. The tree species in the boat is pine and Norwegian spruce. It takes a lot of time to make, but that's the thing about if the hours are cheap and the materials are expensive and hard to get, then it's another world. But then you have the tar from the pine, skovfyr, and then you can use that for tar, especially the roots. There's a lot of tar in. It's Norwegian tree I'm talking about now. This is Norwegian from around Trondheim. When you have it on the mountains, it can be hundreds of years and just a few meters. But grains are growing like this. And then you go up there on the mountainside and harvest them. And that's what we have been done here. That could be like 500 meters or kilometers up on the mountains where they go really slow. And you can see it also that it's kind of close O-rings. And then you have rødgran Norway spruce. If you find one where there's a good root, then you can use it in the boat here. This is the root, the foot of the tree. that you have been using here. You can see it goes, if you will lift them there. You can see here this piece goes from here and all the way over there and up. And then wooden nails here. Everything have a function, and that's a thing when you use so many years to like think and think and think, then you can make it better. The way the boards go is specialized for one fjord in Norway where the waves are in one way, and that takes some time to find out. And this one can be taken out. When you row, you have one more rower here, so you can have 3 rowers. And when you fish, there's actually a spot more here when the fishermen have to work in the back and you have to steer up against the wind, so the waves are like going right. So that was just a short introducing to how you can use wood. But I think we will take some coffee. And it's our goats that's up there. It's a nature project with the commune about saving nature. You can like have your company and live close by. Having an off-grid community started maybe 10 years ago. This fabric have been shut down. It's its own steel profile. All of them are different. They're kind of similar, but it's a lot like the sizes is different.
So this house is a project that I started because I needed a place to live, because I've been moving around the world a lot. I'm really interested in natural materials, so this house is built from mainly wood in different shapes and sizes. Yeah, that was a challenge because you also have to figure out with gravity, like how does this thing not fall over the years and start hanging down. It's going to be a, let's say, a breathable house, so that the air and humidity can move through the walls, which makes it a really nice climate on the inside once it is finished. I can move it around, yes, but I have to put it on a truck, and that of course is a little bit costly. So having a house that I can take with me was a really important decision for me in order to start this project.
It can be a little difference between the surfaces. If you have a wider one, as on this side, if we turn this one upside down, you can see the surface here is a bit narrow. So if you build with this kind of timber, see from the end, you always do the narrow part on top, because you have this every time. If you turn it around, the narrow one down and the wide one here, you will have these so the water will seep. This is important. But it makes no difference which way it's turned when you make the notches, because the notches shall be equal both sides. But I always put a narrow surface up when I do the notches. I have no special conclusion on that. It suits me better. And the idea with this notch is we always work on the center line in the log. This is the center line. I do it with the chalk line. The distance between the notches is going to be very precise. Let's say it's precise 2 meters, 200 centimeters from the middle to the middle of the notch. You always go in center lines or middle of the log when you measure in round timber or this kind of timber. Also, when you are building, this one can be like this, so you have to have a center line from bottom, so it ends up the same place in the top when you are building a house. Be precise with this one. The notch is made out of a square. We use this here, and I take these lines from corner to corner, and this is very precise the same every time I do the notch. So I take away this part and take away this part. Can you imagine that? So if I do this precisely on all the logs, every notch fits every notch. And that is what makes it very easy to build with. If the distance here is precise, the notch is equal, you can take this part. If you put this one on top of this one, we call them the cheeks. The cheeks will fit and also in the middle. And it's not have no importance if this one is maybe wider, the lines is still the same. The cheeks will get bigger or smaller. So it's just a question of how it looks, but it will always fit together. You can do this manual. We have these jigs, scabeloner. It takes a little bit more time. If the logs if they're straight, of course it's much better than if it's bending too much. But this one is straight, so it's easy for this. The surface here is almost on center. It's the same amount of wood here and wood here. 23, 11.5, like this. If it is bending in one end a little, you go a little bit where it's straight. And this one is straight. Down here it's 20.8, it's 10.4. Ungefähr. This is a line with chalk. You can have it blue or red. Just do like this. Take it off. Are you ready? Thank you. We're not going to build a house. We're just going to do some notches. So now it's precisely 2 meters between the notches. Okay. So I hope this will be okay. So I have a hole here. I find my cross I made, 2 meters mark. I have a little mark here. I have a little mark here. And then I should have had 2 small holes here, screwing screws, but I don't. So if the logs and these fits together, it should be precisely above each other. So now it's quite easy. I take my pencil and I do like this, and I put it like this. So this is one side. We have to do the other side. Somebody wants to do this. I'll find a chainsaw. This one always has to be smaller than the surface. So when I did these notches, when I was building lots of shelters and small huts, we had machines to do it, so it was very precise every time we did the cheeks as well, and also these ones. But you can do it for free with a chainsaw. Just try to be precise. Every carpenter and every log builder, whatever, works with lines, never take away the line. When you try to cut on the inside of the line with the chainsaw. But it can be done. Let's move it a little up here. Just push it a little up. You have to look the way you are going to cut. So you have to look down this line on the inside here. So you can see where you're going to. So now I can see what I'm doing again. So next time we remove this one, this part, put the next log in, remove it, on the way up. Uffe han siger, det kan være, det går bedre. You have an iron like this, thinner, and you have holes in it. There's a hole there maybe, there. It's holes in yarn skin, but this, you can have different holes placed different places depending what you're building. This is always the center of a notch. And then you have the jig is like this, and in this space, this can be. So if you see this from the end, so you can place it. And it, of course, it has a little nut like this that fits in the hole. If you see this one from the side, it has like this. Yeah. So if you look from the top, if you put an iron this way, this one is placed on top of this one. Click, it says. You have a chainsaw on here. You have a piece of iron like this. This one you place down in this one. Can you see that? I'll have the always saw on the opposite side where I'm standing. Whoop. And then I just turn around. Whoop. So very quickly I can do all the cheeks cuts. And we had another chainsaw. Here's sticker. It's a chainsaw when you can go directly down and up again. Also on a piece of iron like this that I could click on. So I did the cheeks first, and afterwards I did the cuts with the sticker, and they fell out. And all the cheeks were, all the notch sides were made. We had a little cow, as we call it in Denmark, we put over and make the lines, so we could start out just like we did now. This is a way to do it. Yeah.
So I've been carpenters for 14, coming up 15 years in a local shop where we do carpentry from forests, taking down the trees ourselves, cutting down the trees ourselves, and putting the trees through a workshop into final construction. The forest workshop is 40 acres, and that's enough to reproduce the wood that we take out each year. So we take down trees when they're getting 100 years old, and we have a forest in 5 years intervals. So every 5 years there's a forest part that is 100 years, and we take that down, plant new trees, and we are all the way around. We could start over. The farm is 100 acres, but most of it is rented out for farming and for growth in forest or in buildings for the future. Our firm has started as a very, very small firm when my dad bought some old machinery cheap just to get started. In Denmark, you are taxed on how much you profit after each year. So if we were lucky enough to make a little bit of money, it was better to buying a machine than to claim the money ourselves. So when the year was passed, we were looking at the account with the money, then we have to buy a little bit. And at some point we bought an old sawmill, and the old sawmill have made a lot of wood for us, but it was a slow and heavy process for us. So in time, we had the money to buy this new facility. We simply just started very small and bought a new machine whenever the money was to it. It runs mostly from autumn to spring and makes heat, and on the very windy days our power supply is shutting down, and this supplies all the heat that's needed for all 3 buildings.
How many kilowatts?
17. When we cut all our waste we put in this building, the power supply is taking in the wood itself and cutting it to those pieces that they need to burn, and it start up whenever the degrees is under 57 Celsius and shut down when it's 87, and then just taking in whenever it needs. So I use the coffee table to fill the tank. I do that twice a year. And everything I need to do is empty the, we call it coal container, ash. I do it once a month. It does the rest itself. So this is the workshop that my father designed after the cows got out from here. It's mostly pull up to make windows that can't be made in factories. This is mostly for transporting carpenters and their food. We need at least 3 kilometers of sight and at least 200 meters to the clouds before taking off. Most of our customers is owners of summer houses. We talk to them in the holidays and they say we need to do this and this and this before we come to the next holiday. And when we do it, it's up to the weather, but as long as we keep it between the holidays, they're happy. The name the Flying Carpenters came when we have been in Anholt working for 5 years with a plane. Another carpenter came sailing to the island. He was called the Floating Carpenter and we were called the Flying Carpenters. And that's how we got the nickname the Flying Carpenters. The wood is being filled while we're cutting. It's the saw heads that move back and forward, and I can move the wood from inside the control room. And when I have been cutting, the wood comes out here and to the sorting table, where I can turn it left or right, depending on if it's usable or if it's waste. The machine is doing some noise. Don't get near the machine, please, for safety. The sawmill doesn't care what speed I cut. What can be said is how beautiful does I need it to be. The faster I cut, the more the wood will do like this. So it depends on how much I have to do inside the workshop afterwards. If I cut slowly, the cut will be smoother. So all our waste wood we place here and just blow it into the building near behind us. All this was made yesterday. Så siger den selv, jamen så skal den så lave et snit i... We thought we had to have license. I used to joke that in these environmental times we need more staples than the wood was long. We called Teknologisk Institut, they're called in Denmark, and asked them what do we do? And he said that license are only for if you are selling your wood to other companies, other carpenters. If you're using it for yourself, then you can have the responsibility. You have to decide which wood can be used where, and if anything happens to the construction, the responsibility is on me. That means that we can choose the wood that we think is secure compared to where it's going to fit in the building, if it's going to be vertical construction or it's going to be roof construction. So we are sorting in spurge and large and whatever kind to make sure that the right piece of wood is going the right place in the construction. If I have to sell the wood, I'll have to sell it to other carpenters, and it has never been the intention of the workshop, but I'll have to get licensed to do this. The procedure in doing that, I'm not sure how that's going to work because we were told we didn't need it as long as we do it still. The building is a way to construct the building after the sawmill. So we bought the sawmill first and then draw the building so it fitted exactly to the sawmill where the lifting was needed, where everything was going to go. So that's why the building is made with a lot of corners and stuff like that to make sure that the building fits the sawmill's needs. This is going to be the new building. I'm building it in my spare time, so I'm planning on being finished around 25. In this building there will be an oven for drying, the machines that will be needed for running the chainsaw and getting the most out of the wood with minimum waste. The sawmill is having its own vacuum, taking maybe 80% of the dirt, but the last 20% is going on the floor to cleaning. So when I cut for one day, I'll have a 1 hour cleaning. I want to do that better. I'm making a hole under the sawmill all the way where I'll put a rubber band. All the dirt is going down under the saw to the rubber band, and the rubber band will take it out of the building. The idea, if it works, that there will be very little cleaning from this process. I've used 5 to 8 meters of different kind of woods all the way around the building, so the customers can come out here and we can walk around the building and say, I like this one, and we built that. It's my plan that when customers come to a carpenter workshop, they will be inspired to build from wood. This summer I built that terrace. We had a wedding in 19, and we were wishing money for coming out on wedding holiday, but then came Corona and we never got away. So we used the money on wedding vacation in the backyard instead.
This is a log from ash I fell on my property 10 years ago, cut it in the sawmill, and 3 centimeters from the center I found this. It's from fencing animals, cows or sheep or something. And this little is oak. I was planning to glue laminate oak, and I found this hunting bullet from a rifle. The huntsman didn't get a deer with his home this day. He only shot a tree. What I want to tell about this is very hard for the machinery, and what we get into the sawmill, we have to take what we can, and we can't do anything about it. But on the other side of the sawmill, it's our responsibility to make a good quality. And by that I mean keep the wood clear. Don't put it on the floor. Don't step on it. It gets sand, it gets dirty, and you don't know if it's going to be planed afterwards or the customer have to make something of it. You have to make the best you can. Always clean wood. Get the dust off so it can dry fast, and stack it in a fine direction. I can show you here. Directly from the sawmill, it's very important to get the sawdust off, because the sawdust is keeping the moisture and taking even moisture from the air, and then it's slowly drying. This plank was cut yesterday, but we didn't get the sawdust off. And now we are getting the sawdust off, but already from yesterday and until today, we see marks. That's beginning of some fungus making blue stain. Very fast coming. When you got the moisture off, it's important to stack your wood and pin it like this very correctly, so that the weight of the wood, not only this wood, but the next stack and the next, then the weight goes directly to the ground. Otherwise, the planks are getting crooked. Yeah? Now they are going straight, but if you did like this, a lot of weight on top, this is getting crooked. Yeah? Very easy lessons, but very important. The last thing I would say is, in the end, the planks have to smile. Smile like this one. You see, the earrings smiles. Then the moisture lightly get out. This is correct, this is wrong. The moisture cannot get out.
So how do you decide which size of wood you use for a certain order? Let's say the customer wants 150 by 150 millimeter. Then what we are discussing is how big a square can you get out of a certain log. So say we got this 150 by 150. We have the 150 here, and we measure, this is very rough, we have 150 here, and we have 150 here. So inside this log is hiding 150 by 150. But how do you calculate how big must the log be at the top end? From corner to corner, yes. And there is even a rule for that, Pythagoras. And we're not going to do the calculations here, but if this is A and this is B, you say A in second plus B in second equals C in second. But what you basically need to know is that if you have something here and something here that's square, then roughly you need 1.5 by the sides to get this. If you calculate with that, you will be within a sharp edge log. If it's slightly smaller, you will get what we call vein. There will be a little bit that is not sharp here. If it's okay with the customer, then it's okay, because then you have saved something. But if we look, this is 150 by 150, and if we look down here, it's 24, roughly 24 centimeter or 240 millimeter. But decide if you want to work centimeter, millimeter, or length of clocks, or the size of a cap. But decide which measure type you use because otherwise you will confuse things. If you want, like a very common measure is 100 by 100 millimeter, then the square measure will be 141 millimeter, which is 1.41 times the 100. So if you go 150 millimeter on the top, you will be on the safe side. Now we are going a little bit off track, but the Japanese, whenever they made something, they often make it very, very straight and sharp corners, but they put in what they call a taiko beam, which is only God can make the perfect. So you have to put something in that is crooked, because humans cannot make a totally perfect thing. Can you follow me? So you deliberately put something in that is crooked, and one like this could make a perfect taiko beam, because you put it you put it like so. It's curvy here, and you cut 2 cuts, and then you will have a rough beam with 2 flat sides, and that would be perfect to put over a doorpost or something like that. That would be beautiful. So even the more crooked, the better, and here the bandsaw is perfect. But okay, we have something left here, because I think you can all see if we go down here. Now you only have this size of log, and the order is 150 by 150 again, but we end up inside the log with this one. This is pretty rough. We have the one for the customer, but then you should not throw this away, especially not if it is straight, because you can have like a pretty good board here. You could have a pretty good board here, pretty good board here, maybe not so much here, but also decide what could be the next orders you could get, but also think of, is it worth it? My experience was that in the beginning I started to make 100 or 25 by 100, because they might be used somewhere for some people's chicken house. But I realized that they become what we call storage success. They were lying around for months, for years, and in the end they end up in the chipper. Then I could just have chopped this in the chipper from the beginning. So be careful not to fill up your timber yard with stuff you cannot sell. But then comes the guy who wants 50 by 155. So then we start, you got your 150 here in the height, but then you want to, when you have to make 3 pieces of 50 millimeters each, what will happen with this one here? Yes, we will cut one here, boom. We will cut one here, and then there will be one left here. Is that good? We should try to avoid to have the center in the middle of a piece of timber, because what will happen? The thing is, if a customer asks for 50 by 150, then you need basically to find a log that can carry a 200 by 150. So be sure that you split the pith, the center of the log, that this one is simply split in the middle when you cut. This is the Scandinavian method of cutting. There are also people who start with calculating out, so they make a flat side and then they split the log like this. This is also a way to do it. But you have to be pretty meticulous, because otherwise the blade will run off the pith and then you get the problem anyway. You could provide this one here in the middle and then split it again, so you cut the pith, or you can cut the pith off, but you shouldn't aim at getting the center of the log in any piece of timber, because it will only give you trouble. So this we are talking about is that when we cut, we plan the log, so in the middle will be like a 25 or 32 millimeter plank, a board or small. Yeah, what is the difference between boards and planks? I think we should pass that one now. But then you take a board out that is basically ruined, because it cannot be used for anything. But then you can again cut 25 millimeters out here. Then you will actually here have some very beautiful wood and very stable wood. It's actually the best wood ever. Windows, boards, music instruments, whatever you want to use it for. But this wood will be very stable, because once it starts drying, it will shrink in a very controlled way.
Been cutting wood at the sawmill for 6 years now, on my wood Mizer sawmill. And my main thing is terrace boards, wood for shelters, and and the customers is mostly locals and private customers. The wood comes from our own forest, and it's mainly Douglas and larch. It's been a busy year with the corona. People have not been able to come out traveling. Yeah. So that was the plan to dry out the woods slowly. After trying to sell for the customers, I quickly found out that to sell it like this for customers is quite difficult and takes a lot of time, because they like to see this one, and then you can. Now we use it for dry woods for making our own Christmas gifts and so on, our products ourselves. The guy helping on the saw makes 50, 60 tables a year and have his own shop or store. We have a wide solution of products. We have busy at the forest, planting trees and cutting down trees, felling trees. And we have also busy times at the firewood station, and when the Easter comes or the summer arrives, it's busy with the building project. The year schedule at the shop here, where we also have work in the forest at winter time and busy at the summertime at the sawmill for building materials. So yeah, that makes it busier. And I think also people like to buy wood from special place, not normal wood shop, but where there's a story behind it that comes from his own forest and has maybe been out visiting the sawmill and out watching where the wood have been growing. So I think the storytelling has been quite important for people. So a busy year.
First you can start the mill like It's important when you load the log that this side support is up, so you don't roll them out. So this is what we start with. And when it is up, we put this one out so it is ready to clamp the log. And then we roll the log up. You just place your hand here and you lift this one up first. If you go too far, you can see the log turner is coming up. And then you lift it up by lifting this handle, just way up on the bed. If you want to rotate it, you can just move this one up, and then you'll realize it is rolling on the bed. So you can just lift it a bit in this end with this roller, just a bit. I do it first and you do it afterwards. Then we lower the side support a bit, not to cut them. Okay, this is enough. Okay, and you just lift it up with this one. I just take this one. We need to rotate it to the sawn surface, yes?
Okay.
Okay, then you need to hold it with a... Okay, and you can take the log turner down again and try to rotate it. We need to rotate it a bit.
Oh, rotate more?
Yeah, all the way to the cut surface.
Yeah, okay.
You can try to move this one up. So you clamp them. This one is clamping all. Okay. This is the final cut.
Yeah, okay.
Because you only need this speed.
Yeah.
vente og dreje det,
Ja.
så trækker jeg lige.
Ja.
Vi trækker den til. Den er selvfølgelig ikke det samme som roll downs, men den har sådan lige...
Er det den? Nej.
Det er over 3. Det er over 3, den har den der.
Så, men då kör vi.
When a customer called me the first time he wanted to buy a wood mizer, I asked how much he wants to cut. If he only needs to cut, let's say, 1 or 2 days a week, the smallest meal is okay. Then it depends on his budget, if it should be a small LX50, who is the cheapest one, or maybe a LT15, who have a high capacity, bigger motor, and you can support it with a power feed and debarker, set work, whatever. This will do for a lot of things, for 2 days cutting a week. If you need to cut more, you of course will depend on hydraulic. You shouldn't be afraid of buying a mill who is too small in the first place, because it's very easy to sell as a second-hand mill. There's a lot of customer for this one, and the price is good on this kind of mill. We offer a lot of contacts. We do not take this mill in and hire the price. We just give the contacts on to the next customer, and then we earn money to sell a new mill and have a good representation this way. If it's really a production, you must pick a mill with hydraulic on, because at least here in Scandinavia the time is the most expensive thing we have. Also not to wear out on the mill. So a mill like this is an LT40, and we have a LT20 inside. It's a very good start mill for hydraulic mills, and we have full-time soil with even LT20. We even have hired people to run the mills and actually do their business. We have a lot of mill on institutions for younger people who need some things to do, and if they can cut their own logs, they can do whatever they want afterwards. This is a good key point. It's not only to cut, but it opens the entire market for whatever you want to do. I do not know how concentrated your areas is, but I think start on small mill and start maybe several customers on a mill, because I'm sure you don't need a mill every day. So why not be a community sharing a mill depending on your financial resources? This is what I would recommend. There's no reason to buy a big mill for 2 days use. But if you have a neighbor who can use it as well, maybe even you find one who runs the mill mainly, it gives a better result on the mill instead of a lot of different people. It goes with all machines. I actually started with wood mizer in 1990. I saw the first wood mizer on a forest technical show in Denmark. I ordered the first wood mizer in Denmark, actually the first on the European continent. And we got it in February in 1991. For 8 years I was cutting for beam houses, shaped beams. I started with a carpenter actually on an open field, and we started to make these beam houses, and we managed in the end to make beam houses without any crack at all on the surface. Of course we have it in the start, but we could see on the first houses, if you have the center of the tree just partly inside this beam, there was coming a crack exactly from this point, who was the center, to the outside of the surface, who create a room for water. We make beams who was cut straight through the center, or the center was cut complete away. It was only Douglas spruce. And we turned the inside of the tree outside on the beam. Those small cracks who come when it shrinks and dries out is coming on the inside, but you never have any big cracks on the outside surface of these beam houses. It's a natural thing. If you have the center in any kind of sawn lumber, you have the center from the tree inside this one. It will crack or even twist around the length.
I have this sawmill, and I'm cutting up trees every day, all the year round. And I have work every day, all the year. I have doing it for 22 years, changing from another job, a very good job in the community. I've just been making all those here. It's the rest of it. I have made 300 meters of those kind of wood. They have the timber should make a big torn out there. And today I shall go at, but normally I have been cutting up about 400 cubic meter. It was in the start, it took 1 or 2 years when the people find out it was it, but it was going quickly, and I was lucky to get a bigger customers. But I think it was nicer to go down here. So I changed when I was near 50 years old, so now I've been here for 22 years in full time. Yeah. Have this hold down here. It's a nice system because you can close it, bring it a little bit down, and then keep the wood fast. Yeah. This has it was one of the first I make a computer with. I can make I go up. I start normally, I say 10 pieces. It should be 25. And I make 2 millimeters for each cut. For the blade. And then I bring it to this one. And then I take a cut. Because now, every time I go down in the end, I just go bump up and go back and cut and cut. And at last, it will be, I can show you. Yeah, I take some cut. When I was starting up, I was thinking to work with wood. I didn't know exactly how it was, but I was going to a big Mizer, and I saw Brian from Mizer, for it was 25 years ago, cutting up with a small wood mizer, and I think that is nice. You can always selling that kind of wood, because I also was thinking about to make firewood, but that one, I think that could be a good job for me. And that was, and the special was to stay home and work home. I have the place. It's 5 hectares, and I have a Christmas tree up in the top, and I have a little bit animal. And with my wife, we make 150 apple trees and a lot of blueberry. We have a lot of deer out here. Rådyr, dårvildt, kronvildt. Yeah. I make maybe 4 blocks, and then I take a new blade on it and use to make the rest, because I want it should be very straight. Yeah.
How do you know the tension of the blade?
You can feel it.
I can feel it.
You have it in the fingers.
Yeah. Normally, when I have a total day I cut maybe 7 hours, I use 2, also maybe 3, but it don't cost. It only costs 65 kroner to send it to Germany. Yeah, to cut it out again. To Slabing. Yeah. I got 100 blades, and then I send the half down for. So always have sharp. It takes normally about 10 days when I send it to Germany, and when it's back again. And then I have a deal with them all the time. When it's finished, it have go down here. They change it to put a new one in. Yeah. So that's very, very easy to And there have never been problems with that.
That's good.
I'm buying all the wood. I cut only up in Douglasgun, and I sell it to private customers, and I have also selling it for big companies. I have a special big customers out here. It's calling Djur Sommerland. It's a park for family go there in the summertime to have fun, and it's a very big customer for me. And then I have people coming from the area here where I live, but I also sent wood for Sjælland and Copenhagen community. In many years I sent wood over there. Also people come from, they have small forest maybe and they come here with a wagon and ask me to cut it up. And that's, hvad hedder det, når det er gennemsnitlig? Average. Kind of wood. Det mindste mål skal være 16, 17, 18 in top. And also it must be too much of... Yeah. And it has been changing because everybody get money now out of the wood, so they take a lot of wood out. And there's more, hvad kan man sige, dårligt. It's okay. I use it for kalmarbrædder. Yeah. It's a local company, but they get it from all the parts here in Jutland. We have a very good Douglas out here in Sostrup and Mejlgaard here in the middle of Jutland. Yes. Yeah. Normally it's 64 centimeters max, 4 meters long, but it's only make a little bit this, then you have a problem. I am cutting up a big oak, it's about a meter, and then I put it up and I start with the top, and I can take maybe one cut up there, drive it around and take one cut. I can't make like kalmarbrædder in such a big wood. No. I also cutting up wood for people coming with, if they have an old tree down in the garden, and they ask me, could we make bænk to sit on? Say, that's okay, we do it, and they come and bring it here, and I cut it up for them. That's what I do. Yeah.
Used for more than 2 hours on the mill, then you have to remove it, otherwise you stretch the blade and it will cause blade breakage during the time. If you use them longer, you stretch the blade and you can maybe only resharpen them 5 times and then the blade will simply break. If you change them within 1.5 or 2 hours running time on the mill, it can be resharpened up to 10 times before the blade breaks. Normally resharpening on a blade takes 1/3 of a millimeter, so you have, this is a standard 32 millimeter blade. So if you wonder how many resharpening that has been done on this blade, you can simply measure it. For every millimeter it is more narrow than 32 millimeter, it is about 3 resharpening. So if it's down on 29 millimeter width, in total width, it's about it's 9 to 10 resharpenings what's been done, and then the blade is about able to be thrown away because it gets too soft and it will easily break, so it's not maybe worth to spend time on resharpen and do the setting on it. I always do it the same way, and I hardly don't know what my hands is doing, but I always have the teeth out to the right. This way it's open, but if you close it this way, it's not possible to open it. It's locked. So I go to one until I have this one who's free, and I simply release the bottom one and take it on the cross here and open it lightly. When I want to fold the blade again, I give it a light push down in the front end, and in front of my hands I fold the blade. And it is done when it's on the way down, I simply fold it, and I can take it lightly up again, and it is ready for shipment. Once you pack the blade, it's very important always to put this little wire around it again. If you put it in the boxes without doing so, always back to back, and the box hard work to take them apart again if you do not have the wire around it. I show it again. I always have it out to the right, the teeth. Hardly explain it, but my hands is just doing it, and I have the one cross in my right hand and the other one in my left. Then it goes easy, and there's no pressure on it here. It's doing itself, and then I just fold it lightly. Okay. It's very hard for the wrist if you're using force. If you try it with a 1.4 millimeter blade, it's really a tough one to fold. If it's big dimension of old Douglas, I will recommend some Slabing blade instead of, because once it is dry and it is big, it is making everything dull within a short time.
it is taking the edge of everything. So it is the most nastiest thing to cut, but it is the best log ever, I think. On oak, for example, I'll always use a blade for hardwood. Some prefer the standard blade, which is 1030. 1030 is a standard blade, and for hardwood we have a different profile. I recommend only 734, but we also have 929, but only consider two, so you can, if you don't remember the name, you can say it's for soft or it's for hardwood, then I'll know what it is. There's different provider if you need stellite blade. Stellite blade is extremely more expensive. If you can do it with a wood mizer blade, why not do it with it's a quite cheap blade, or 165 it is now, Danish crown for this blade. Normally other providers take the double or even more. So you can cut this and oak and spruce, you can cut it nicely with standard blade. But if you have really big dimension and you are in a high production, I will prefer blade with stellite blade. And if you are getting really big production, then I would even prefer a wider blade.
Had a situation.
Where we had been sawing and then we split up and some went out and I was on my way home. I was just coming in and then I saw the blade had tension on it. What I did was that I literally took the spanner off here, loosened the tension, but then what I did was that I put the spanner on top of the key so that the operator can see somebody has tampered with the machine. Because if I take off the tension and the operator comes back and says, oh, we need sawing again and start up, bad things could happen. There's a lot of bad noise. And also I can say, when you're moving the saw, check out that there's not something on the table so that you don't drive straight into it. What we've been doing here is that we have cut a plank or a slab out of a Douglas. We've been using a chainsaw, which is relatively cheap instrument for making big lumber. It's pretty tedious, but compared to a full-scale sawmill, it is rather cheap. One idea with this could be if you fell a tree in a customer's garden, then you are able to cut it up in planks, carry it out and utilize it instead of letting it go to rot or for firewood. Now we can utilize this nice pretty log instead of it might have rotted away. One operator used the chainsaw together with a winch. It's also possible to operate the chainsaw with two operators, which is probably the most sensitive because the chainsaw is heavy to carry. We have something to cope with that as well, small carrier wagon or whatever. But when it comes to moving the slab itself, it is also good to be two guys or maybe even a front-end loader, as you will see in a moment.
If you thin the forest, if you take care of the forest, it will produce timber that can be used for buildings and also for furniture and other things that we need in our society. We have seen that monocultures of Sitka spruce has some problems. There will be a problem with insects, and also they simply die when they get 40-50 years old. There's no obvious reason why they die. They simply die. Maybe 1 year is 5% dying, and then 2 years after another 5% is dying. As it's from the dominating trees, it's not the small trees dying. Someone says that it might be some problems with damage after storms, when the fine roots are cracked, the water balance in the trees is disrupted, and then they die. So many trees are growing very good in Denmark, but some of them is not going good when they're in monocultures. So mixtures may be the way of making stable, high productive forests for the future.
And we are, you know something about Skovskolen, but now we went into the forest. The forest is not Skovskolen's, it's a private owner, it's a foundation. They got 2,500 hectares, and the main purpose is to get money. Douglas is a very attractive timber producer because the wood has a good strength, the density is high, and is very, very useful for construction and also for other purposes as playgrounds, for building shelters, and also timber. It is producing very well. It has some disadvantages in the use. It's difficult to get started. It's winter frost and late spring frost will damage the trees, and also the root system in the use is growing not so fast as the top of the trees, so there is a not equilibrium between the top and the root, and then can be pressed by the wind, so they will be curved, and it's not good for the sawmill to get curved trees. They can't saw around the corners. Normally they are mixed with other species so they can stabilize them in the use, and here at the district they are mixed with Sitka spruce, so the first thinnings they will take out the Sitka spruce, and then the Douglas will grow further and be the final crop. And also the Douglas fir is more easy than other trees to regenerate, so it can be used in a more natural system. The Grandis is high producer of timber. It's really a volume producer. And until now, the market has demand volume, big trees, and not quality trees, because when Grandis is growing very, very, very fast, the year rings are wide, and the density of the timber is low, and is not certified for construction. But it's producing a lot, and at the moment there's a good worldwide market for timber. We export in Denmark a lot of our Grandis timber for Asia, and they use it for construction over there. We most use it for pallets and boxes, and yeah, it's not certified for construction. The larch, there's one larch, an European larch. There's a risk of the European larch with some cancer, and when you cross it with the Japanese larch, you get resistant against this cancer, and you got high productive tree species. They got this advantage that the growth in the use is very, very fast, and you got wide ear rings with the low density, and the angles of fibers is not good for sawn timber. So hybrid larch produce a lot of trees, but it is not worth making construction of. It's bad quality, exactly. You should never put all your eggs in one basket. There's a risk with all tree species. Some of them can blow off. Some of them, history has been very difficult to sell. So you make different species so you diversify your risk. Also, there's a question about the deers, because the deers, they browse the Norway spruce and also strip the bark. So they are difficult to cultivate, and also the stability is low when you got this root rot into the stems because of the damage the deers have been done. So some here they are choosing the tree species that is not so attractive for the deers, and also species should be high productive, because the aim of this place is to produce timber. There's a different soil type here, where some places where the Sitka spruce is growing very well, there's more wet areas, and on the high ground, the Douglas fir and the Grandis is also producing very well at these sites. So it's a combination of soil type, of the local climate. You've got some cold holes when it's cold in the spring, and take care of the risk. And also some places when you got the deciduous trees, is for stabilize the whole forest. Because one of the main issues is in Denmark is that the wind is damaging the forest when there is storms. It is important to have variety in maintenance in the forestry.
Here we are working with the red deer. Lövenholm Estate is about 3,500 hectares, and we have about 400 to 500 red deer in the forest and the field around, and we have 150 fallow deer in the wood too, and we have some roe deer. We have not any pheasants and small game. We have some hares, but it's a red deer we are working with. We have 3 hunts every year, and we are about to shoot about 30 to 50 deer on the hunts, red deer, and we have to shoot 2 or 3 old male hjort. We have about 30 to 40 hunters at the 3 hunts every year, and they buy a ticket to be at the hunt one day. And we shoot, and they can buy the deer to eat them afterwards. They take the cork of the trees. Sometime in the summer, when the cork is very easy to throw off trees, it's a very disturbing for the tree to have this wound. The tree will fall about 10 or 20 years earlier. It's better for us to cut it down and not help with the deer. And I will be here for 5 years. I have a long before and other estates on the other place in Denmark where we have worked with small animal, pheasants and partridge and hares.
And for me it's very important to learn more about cutting, drying. For me it was very good lesson to go to Sweden, Denmark, to learn from these people.
We have learned that from our friends in Scandinavia, that they can use both the best quality on a big scale and less good quality on a small scale.
It has been a privilege to be involved in TreProX. It has been unbelievably great organized.
I'm participating in TreProX because I have bought a sawmill myself. I think it's interesting to see other kind of countries, how they're making their forest and how they're getting used out of their lumber.
I feel that I have gained a lot of knowledge in this program from many large and small details. How to increase the value, how you treat your working environment, how to rethink the flow of wood in and out, the value of different kinds of wood and these small things like...
I think the most important result from the TreProX project has been the networking. All these small companies with small production sawmills have learned to get to know each other, so they can have a network where they help each other with different issues. And we also need to continue the work to use new kind of wood species that we use very little in building now, like birch, poplar and Douglas fir, for instance. That's the important results from TreProX project.
By the end of the workshop, we created a lot of learning outcomes, a lot of lessons that we can take back home. We created a classroom outside the classroom where we opened the door for our students, for the trainers, for the teachers, for the experts from the sector to come together, learn together and train together.